Salutations, Quackers. I recently played the demo for a Souls-like game called Lies of P, and I just want to go over my general first impressions and an overview of the different mechanics that I encountered. First, I want to emphasize that this game is literally just a demo, and my thoughts and what we have seen are not representative of the final product in any way whatsoever. Okay, so I want to talk about the combat real quick, since that's what you're going to be doing 90% of the time, so it's pretty important to have this feel good. In general, it feels relatively smooth if you like to R1 spam, but it feels like there might be a bit much tacked onto the combat. So you have your regular R1 or light attack, and that feels good and performs well, and then you have your R2 or heavy attack. To me, the R2 didn't feel like it made much of a difference, it didn't feel like it did much work to stagger more than the R1, and at least for the weapons I used, it didn't do enough damage to try and weave it in between R1s. In contrast, you have these weapon abilities on each individual weapon. There's two types of this ability per weapon. So first is a quick damage ability or like a buffing ability that I feel like was quick enough and, at least for the attack, did enough damage or buffed your weapon enough that you could easily weave it in where you needed it in between your R1 attacks, and it was worth it. The second ability I didn't ever use too much, but I could see them being more useful if there's PvP in the full release of the game. The second abilities were very obviously inspired by weapon arts in Dark Souls 3, which I'm not knocking at. I think that it was a good idea for them to add that aspect into the game. They don't copy it one for one. Lastly, before I move on from basic combat, I want to say that I felt that I very often very easily got stuck on enemies and couldn't get out. I'll give the benefit of the doubt and also say that I was just dodging the wrong way or I need to get good, but I feel like I was getting caught very often. And it's like getting caught in between their toes, not being able to escape. Alright, moving on. So another couple aspects that I want to touch on is that Lies of P does have a utility arm like Sekiro. Now, you won't have nearly enough movement like you did in Sekiro, but it does provide some neat potential. In the demo, they give you 3 different types of arms to try. The first was very generic and was just kind of a short range melee, that if we had the numbers, I would assume it does more stagger than a regular attack, but it was kind of hard to tell. The third was kind of an electric shock that you could charge up and deal more damage to robotic-based enemies, which were all the enemy types we saw in this demo. But most importantly was the second arm that I thought opened up the most potential. The second arm was kind of like a grappling hook that you could hook on to medium to small enemies to bring to you, and it also acted as a kind of interrupt, so it's very useful outside of boss fights. It did absolutely nothing to bosses, even shooting them right in the head, they did nothing. The next aspect I want to bring up is that each weapon can be ripped into 2 separate pieces, the blade and the hilt. You then could combine either of these parts back into different blades or hilts and make a completely different weapon. I thought this was incredible, and I can't wait to see all the options we get to make, and I can't wait to see what everyone comes up with. For the demo, I really liked the electric club, which usually scales very well with the advanced stat, which seems to be like the magic stat or faith stat for Dark Souls. But I didn't quite like the moveset, and I was already spec'd into strength pretty heavily. So what I was able to do was combine the head of the electric club into the hilt of the greatsword that we started with, and it basically changed the scaling to be more efficient with strength instead of advance, and changed the moveset to match more with that starter greatsword. So some really nice customization and potential there. Can't wait to see where that goes. Now that leads to a perfect transition into my next topic. Although there may not be any character customization as of right now, you have incredible amounts of customization of pieces of your character. For one, you have different outfits and hats that you can collect from exploring the world to make your character more unique. 2, you have a regular Souls-like leveling system to refine your build as you see fit. 3, you have 4 different augments you can add to your body that act as a sort of armor or armor slots for your character. These are basically what adds to your defenses or armor in regular Souls-likes. 4, you can upgrade your weapons in a very similar way that you may be used to if you have played the Dark Souls series games, such as upgrading the damage and scaling directly with your currency, Ergo, and a specific upgrade material. 5, there's also a skill tree of sorts, where you have 2 separate slots that you can level into a skill that unlocks something extra you can do. For example, there's something called Link Dodge that you can level into, which gives you an additional dodge in the middle of your regular dodge animation. And finally, for each of these 2 slots you can put into that skill tree, you can add an effect that adds onto your build. For example, I can slot into one of those spaces of the of the Link Dodge, an add-on that gives me an additional ergo per kill. Then in the other slot, I can slot in an add-on that increases the damage I do when I critically strike an enemy, like when you backstab, riposte, or execute when they're staggered. So there's so much customization and so many different builds that you can do. But sorry, that part was kind of lengthy, all for just for combat and customization, but there's a ton of it. And so it's really some potential there. Real quick, I want to touch on the boss fights, the world, and the music. First, there are only 2 boss fights in the demo, and they felt unique and challenging, but not to the point where I felt like I couldn't beat them. They were those types of bosses that, if you tried enough and memorized their moves enough, you could play the fight well and eventually beat them. And you'll see in my playthrough, I died quite a bit. So I think the boss fights were well designed and nothing felt unfair. Next, the world was a little predictable, having played quite a few Souls-likes in my history, but the environment still felt unique and was very pretty, and I didn't feel like I got lost at all. Often on my first playthrough of games, I will lose track of where I went to go to X location or how to get back to Y checkpoint, but after playing this game, I feel like I could walk easily back through it while remembering where I'm going. There was only one side quest-ish type encounter within this demo, and it was pretty interesting and easy to get, so I hope they have more like that in the base game. And finally, the music. I didn't pay much attention to the music as I was exploring, so I can't say that it stood out to me much, but the boss fight music was impactful and fit the fight well. But what I really want to focus on is that there are collectible records throughout the world that you can take back to the hub and just play while you're AFK or while you're leveling your build. And maybe it's just the type of music I like, but the one song that I found during the demo was so beautiful. I spent a moment in my playthrough videos to just listen to it and enjoy it. I really hope that these soundtracks are available outside of the game somehow, because I'd love to just play them. Okay, so in conclusion, I thought this demo was quite fun. The amount of customization might be a bit much for some people, including me, but it gives a lot for people who really want to min-max everything out of the build. But outside of that, I definitely will be doing a full playthrough, if not just to enjoy the music and the boss fights of this game. I'd say a solid 8.5 out of 10 for this demo alone. And yeah, I can't wait to see more. And wow, you made it with me all the way to the end of the video. You can look for me elsewhere. I have a link tree in the description where you can find me on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. And thank you for watching. This has been What is Quack-a-Lackin' with Liza P.